Hi, this is an overview of capability maturity models, which are tools that can be used by organisations to assess their performance. They help to paint a picture of what high performance might look like and raise awareness of the improvements that could be made. Models come in all sorts of forms, but they're usually laid out in about 5 levels of increasing capability or maturity, with a general description of each level, starting from not much maturity right through to quite highly sophisticated organisations. These high-level descriptions are generally built up from quite detailed descriptions of a range of characteristics. This example here is the Department of Commerce IT model, which is one of the early originators that raised awareness about this tool, this type of tool being useful. This one was developed back in the 90s. A lot of this kind of work has come out of the IT industry, with the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University being one of the main instigators of it all. They've since spun off their work in this area into a separate institute that now is a business in its own right, driving a lot of this work. They've developed quite detailed models, some ranging to hundreds of pages, quite complex things, with whole accreditation programs going around it. This is an example of some of their accreditation work. As you can see, a lot of it's still within the IT industry and mainly focused on this sort of commercial development for sale to other organisations, so it's business to business kind of work, where accreditation is not so much demanded, but it's a useful differentiator for people bidding for contracts and the like. And here they're showing trends over time of the use of these models and how they're leading to many more organisations being at higher levels of maturity, higher levels of performance. But there's a bunch of other models that are a bit less formal, quite informal in fact, and they're just offering basic guidance. This is one from PricewaterhouseCoopers on project management maturity. There's a document behind this around the different levels. There's another one depicting it in a different way, looking at how organisations might improve their efforts at collaborating with other organisations. And this is an example from Microsoft guiding their IT architecture development around big data, real-time data analytics and the like. So that's an example of all the different types of models that are around. There's a gazillion of them dealing with different things. I've had a crack at developing one for conservation, mainly because I think it might be a useful way to describe just what high performance might look like, and also to show the bigger picture that's of the benefits that can flow from full exploitation of open standards and its systems. It's using the same sort of 5-level structure of all the models, and a bunch of characteristics, which are sort of an amalgam of characteristics used in different models for different purposes. Primarily dealing with the conservation work itself, this top category of characteristics, but then also with the broader business processes that support conservation, and just having a go at defining levels within those areas that can leverage the information coming out of conservation projects that are using open standards. A couple of these, like finance and people management, there's existing models, more generic ones in those areas that are much more useful for looking at those areas in particular. I've just really looked at them from a conservation perspective. And I've had a go at filling in the matrix of describing these characteristics at each of these levels. It needs a whole lot more input from a whole different range of people if this is to be really useful. It's just very much a first draft. And I've also had a go at starting to define for each of the characteristics the sort of guidance that I've seen in other documents around moving up from between the levels on these characteristics. I think the main way it could be used is really just as a broad guide to self-assessment of where an organisation sits, basically by just highlighting the characteristics that seem to apply and thinking about what characteristics are desired and worth striving for. It's worth noting that not every organisation needs to be at level 5. All the models are pretty clear about that. There's a cost to get there, and it's around cost benefit, around what characteristics does your organisation need, and how much you get there. Having said that, I think for organisations to really tap into things like the impact investing market, they really need to be operating up at levels 4 and 5 to just have the track record and the performance level that sort of market requires. And right now I think most of us are down at sort of 1, 2s and 3s, so a fair bit of improvement that's possible. So that's a high-level description. There's much more detail available in the document. Keen to work with others if there's a general consensus that this might be something worth striving for.